This is Caribbean News Desk. I'm Dennis Chabrol. In today's edition, the Caribbean Development Bank finances disaster insurance for Haiti. Caricom finally adopts the Fisheries Policy, but many related laws are old. Controversy in Dominica over the renaming of an airport. Homelessness hits Jamaican gays and lesbians. And Twitter is now allowing users to log in with their phone numbers. Details of these and other stories coming up. The Caribbean Development Bank CDB will once again ensure that Haiti has insurance coverage to limit the impact of catastrophic hurricanes and earthquakes. The Barbados-based CDB says it is providing a grant of $2.5 million to cover Haiti's premium to the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, or CCRIF, for the period June 1, 2014 to May 31, 2015. The decision to provide the grant was taken at the 263rd meeting of the Board of Directors of CDB, which was held in Barbados on October 16, 2014. Haiti's director for the CDB, Hansi Pierre-Louis, thanked the CDB for paying the money to the CCRIF. The CDB says that Haiti earned a rebate of $1.2 million at its traditional premium because that country did not make any claims for the 2012 to 2013 period. Haiti has decided to use the value of the rebate to secure policy coverage for the additional hazard of excess rainfall. The CCRF is the world's first regional insurance fund and is a parametric insurance facility owned and operated and registered in the Caribbean for governments in the region. It is designed to limit the financial impact of catastrophic hurricanes and earthquakes to Caribbean governments by quickly providing short-term liquidity when a policy is triggered. Still in Haiti, more than 30 people are infected with cholera every day, despite the progress the Caribbean country has made in fighting the disease. That's according to the World Bank. An epidemic which broke out in 2010 has cost over 8,500 lives and infected over 800,000 people. Waterborne diseases like cholera are leading causes for mortality of children in Haiti. A high-level donor conference was recently held in Washington, D.C., to help accelerate the access in Haiti to clean water, sanitation, and health services over the next 3 years. Speaking to Jocelyn Sambira, the World Bank Special Envoy, Mary Barton-Dock, began by sharing the progress made.
Overall, in the cholera epidemic, there's been a vast decrease each year in the number of cases and the number of deaths. So in 2010, there were over 4,000 deaths. That has declined steadily to where in 2013 there were about 572 deaths. And so far this year, I believe there are under 50 deaths. So it's from 4,000 down to under 50. And so it's a pretty dramatic decrease.
What more needs to be done to help keep the epidemic under control?
In order to keep the epidemic under control and not to have another serious outbreak, the best approach is to improve access to clean water and improve sanitation throughout the country in order to ensure that what cholera cases do appear don't lead to death. We need to continue to strengthen the health system.
Have any calculations been made regarding how much it would cost?
Yes, several calculations have been made. In the paper that we're presenting in the conference, we've looked at the 16 communes which were the most critical in terms of cholera outbreaks, and we've estimated that in order to fill the gap in infrastructure and health systems in those communes, you would need to invest about $310 million in the next 3 years.
There has been some advocacy for schools to get better services if more funds come in for Haiti. Do you feel that this is one of the priority areas? Is that something that the World Bank supports?
Absolutely. You know, in these 16 communes, we are prepared to start with both schools and clinics in terms of investing in water and sanitation.
Is there a message in particular that you're bringing to the conference in D.C.?
Our message on this conference is that about 38% of Haitians lack access to safe drinking water. Only 24% of Haitian families have access to improved sanitation. And in order to ensure that we never again have a cholera outbreak where 8,000 people might die, we need to address water and sanitation. We also, since cholera is endemic in Haiti's environment now, we need to ensure that the healthcare systems are strong enough to respond where cases do occur.
The 15-nation Caribbean community, or Caricom, now has a new fisheries policy, but the fishery laws of most member states are outdated. After several years of drafting and negotiations, the Common Fisheries Policy was adopted earlier this month at the Caribbean Week of Agriculture 2014 held in Suriname. Executive Director of the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, or CRFM, Milton Houghton, says the policy contains rules for ensuring that the region's fish stocks are not overexploited. While the Caribbean Fisheries Policy is fairly up to date, the CRFM boss says laws related to fishing in many member states have to be updated.
And it's not only Jamaica. There are other countries in the region where their primary fisheries legislation is outdated. Many of these were prepared 20, 30, 40, 50, up to nearly 100 years ago, and we're still using them. It's just outdated. Science has evolved, and law has changed, and we have issues and challenges and principles now that didn't exist 50 years ago or even 30 years ago. So one of the things that many of our countries will have to do is to look very carefully at the legal framework for their fisheries, the laws and the regulations.
Mr. Houghton says the CRFM will need a lot more international support to implement coordinated policies to ensure sustainability and conservation of fish stocks. Tens of thousands of mainly poor and marginalized persons of mainly coastal areas are employed by the fishing industry across the Caribbean. In Guyana, where a no-confidence motion is hanging over the President Donald Ramotar administration, it is unclear when the National Assembly will meet again. Now that the 2-month parliamentary recess is over, sectoral and select committees are continuing their work, but the House is yet to meet. This despite calls mainly by the smaller Alliance for Change party for the House to be convened and for that party's no-confidence motion to be debated immediately. So far, the government has not called a sitting. The AFC has since written to the Speaker, Raphael Trotman, asking him to call a sitting of the House. The main opposition of Partnership for National Unity has declined to dispatch a joint letter to the Speaker, but has instead opted to issue a joint statement with the AFC. The issue now is even if the Speaker heeds the call by the opposition to convene a sitting, will the Clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Sherlock Isaacs, comply? Mr. Isaacs is already on record as saying that it is the government's call to decide when the House should meet. Previous clerks of the National Assembly have refused to comply with directives of all the speakers for the House to meet. The leader of the Alliance for Change, or AFC, Comrade Ramjitan, says now that the opposition has a one-seat majority, the clerk is obliged to listen to the speaker's directives.
Those precedents ought not to be binding on today's dispensation of a minority government, and also of a Section 8(2) that ought to be given its proper meaning. I do not see those decisions binding now. I feel that they were wrong in their interpretation, and they must be overruled, as it were, because we must not allow, the legislative branch must never allow an executive member to hold it at ransom. Come on. You want government to work and you want parliament to be stalled? I can't understand it. Then you have what is executive tyranny.
Family and community discrimination against the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender community in Jamaica has boosted the number of LGBT people living in the streets. That's according to research conducted by the New York-based Human Rights Watch. In its report, Not Safe at Home, the human rights organization warns that LGBT people are often driven from their homes and communities. HRW was quoted by Hensi FA as saying that landlords refuse to rent to members of this community and deny them housing, forcing many of them on the streets. The study identifies the most vulnerable victims as children and young adults who have been rejected by their families and live on the streets, where they face violence and harassment from the police and the public. To prepare this comprehensive report, HRW conducted some 1 interviews of LGBT people between April and June 2013. 56 said they were victims of some type of violence based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. 19 people reported the crimes, but police only took formal statements in only 8 cases. Meanwhile, the other 37 did not report the cases due to fear of retaliation from the perpetrators because reporting a homophobic or transphobic hate crime would out them to the broader society. A leading academic in the Dominican Republic believes that Caricom is wasting its time with seeking reparation from its former European colonizers, but his view has been dismissed by a history professor at Binghamton University in New York. Director of the Dominican campus of the Latin American College of Social Sciences, Evan Hojando Laura, was quoted by the Spanish news agency Agencia F as saying that Caricom should focus on priority issues. He says calling for reparations diverts attention from strengthening regional cooperation on issues such as health, disaster management, trade, and agriculture. Hojando Laura warns that a cash-strapped Caricom movement, to which member states hardly pay annual contributions, cannot afford to harm European aid to certain development programs in the Caribbean. But Assistant Professor of History at Binghamton University, Nigel Westmus, disagrees with the Dominican Republic's expert.
Those things could actually be enhanced by a reparations process. But I'm saying that reparations could in fact enhance those areas of national and regional development. When the process gets going, if the political will is there and Europe is engaged and those requirements of repayments or whatever comes back into the region, those could actually help those areas which he identified.
Mr. Westmus believes that the region needs to engage in a wide public education at all levels about the importance of seeking reparation from Europe. He tells Caribbean News Desk that if the Caribbean peoples are educated, they can easily support Caricom's push for compensation of slavery, and such monies can be used to finance many of the region's priority areas. As the government of Prime Minister Roosevelt's carrot gets ready to rename the Melville Hall Airport in Dominica on Monday, after late Prime Ministers Roosevelt, Douglas, and the Pierre Charles, the Douglas family is opposed to the move. They claim that they were not consulted, and it is disrespectful to Roosevelt Douglas, who died in office in 2000. Pierre Charles, another Prime Minister, also died in office 10 years ago. Sean Douglas, a former government press secretary, is the nephew of Roosevelt Douglas.
Well, basically, I believe that Rosie on Monday night, next week Monday, when this airport is renamed after him and Pierre Charles, Rosie Douglas that I knew for 24 years, Rosie, I believe, will be turning in his grave. He'll be somersaulting in his grave. A man of that stature, of that oomph, that substance, to call that, what they have there, Melvin Hall, after him, when they know fully well that within 5 or 10 years from now, that airport will be condemned to just a shed. I think it's shocking. I am totally against its renaming. But of course, I'm not surprised. Yes. Those guys are trying to wrap the cloth of Rosie and Pierre around them as they get ready to steal another election.
Tiana Behenzen is a lawyer and former magistrate in Dominica. He is the son of Douglas and is opposed to the move. He says that he may very well enter the political arena if the airport is renamed after his father.
You know, what I have to say is this, I dare them to put my father's name on that building in Melvin Hall. They will see another side of me. I will make sure that I raise a group of conscious men and women and enter this little political race that we have going on here. Let them be brave. These lost souls, let them be brave and put my father's name and disrespect him. Let them put it on the building and they will see.
In southern Guyana, near the border with Brazil, lightning shocked 2 school-age children and damaged a section of the house in which they were living. They were rushed from their residence at St. Ignatius to the nearby Lethem Public Hospital. Their conditions were not immediately known. The house was partly scorched and a mattress burnt. At the time of the incident, all the members of the household were at a nearby school to collect an annual state grant of $50 for school children. And finally, Twitter formally declared war on passwords during a developers conference in San Francisco, unveiling a new system that allows users to log into mobile apps with a phone number. Jeff Siebert, director for mobile platforms at the popular social network, on Wednesday introduced Digits, a free tool Twitter offers in 28 languages and 216 countries. With digits, which is not part of Twitter, the user types in the phone number and receives a one-time confirmation number via text. Siebert is convinced that the system is better than the combination of email addresses and passwords, which he said is easy to forget, often difficult to key in on mobile phones, and exposed to identity theft. Developers attending the conference, like Derek Hearn, a young techie from Chicago, welcomed Twitter's tool. And that's Caribbean News Desk for today. Don't forget you can visit us online at caribnewsdesk.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/caribnewsdesk. We're also on Twitter. If you wish to advertise on our program, send an email to caribnewsdesk@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dennis Chabrol.